Hey, good evening. Welcome back. Hope you had a wonderful spring break, able to get some rest, relaxation, and now we head into the second part of this course, which is a great opportunity for us to pause and reflect, think about things that we could have done better over the course of the first part, and make those changes that are necessary. And also, if we were doing pretty good, to maintain that same momentum. This is really where the course starts to get maybe more familiar, possibly even more interesting as we'll start getting into many of the events that we are more familiar with. Although we have one final area of East Asia that we will focus on before moving into um, the 19th century and kind of discovering World War One, World War Two, and other events as we move forward. So as we think about this week, one of the things that I guess occurs to me is how much of history is overlooked. And maybe I shouldn't really say overlooked as far as maybe the word is like ignored. Just and I mean, there's a lot there, right? I mean, there's so much history, and it's hard to talk about everything that needs to be discussed. But there's one aspect of, I guess, Asian history that really needs a little more attention to it, and that is the Taiping Rebellion. And why that is interesting is because it was the bloodiest civil war. And when we're referring to a civil war, we always refer to an internal war. I mean, the United States Civil War was internal because it was between, the northern states and the southern states, or the Union and the Confederacy. It was, within one particular country. So when we start looking at this Civil War, this rebellion, which is very similar to the United States Civil War rebellion, when you have the southern states wanting to succeed, to leave the northern states or to leave the United States, you start to see that here in China. And you know, I think there's several things to take from it. First of all, it was an internal conflict, and usually when you look at history and you see civilizations that are destroyed or removed from history, it never comes from external. It always comes from internal. Sure, you have people that invade, people that come in and take over, but that only happens after there's discord and a division within the particular country. Same thing here in this rebellion. You have internal factions that are fighting each other in China, and it leads to this rebellion, which is, as I mentioned, the bloodiest civil war. It's one of the bloodiest wars in history. The deaths are comparable to World War One. I mean, there's casualties and deaths is between 20 and 30 million people. And what this does is not, I mean, of course, China is still around today, right? I mean, and they've maybe made a comeback, if you will, and they've established themselves as a very high country, one to be reckoned with, if you will. But during this particular period, this internal rebellion basically creates a significant change in Asian policy, where you start to see these spheres of influence that start to make their way, whether it's Great Britain or the United States, Russia, others, they start invading into China, um, taking over various things or becoming more involved in certain aspects. So this is one of those rebellions that you don't want to skip over. Um, Unless you're really into Asian history, it's not one that you're going to spend, months and months of research, but it is pretty interesting, and it just once again shows you that history does repeat itself, because lessons learned from the United States Civil War, ignored. Lessons learned from, you could even say, the American Revolution, ignored. French Revolution, ignored. Things of that nature. And once we get to this rebellion, it's going to set up once again a entry point into the World War One coming in, and the Great War, World War Two, and on we go. So history does have this problem of repeating itself, where we do not learn the lessons of history, or we don't apply the lessons of history to our own unique situation. So take that for what it is, but that's one of the more interesting things that we'll study this particular week. Now, as for your assignments, of course, you have your Chapter 22 reading questions, and I do want to state that as we move into the second part of the course, I'm looking specifically for more detail. You've been with it long enough now. You need to give detail, substance in your work, so we're really going to be paying attention to ensure that you do that. So 1 sentence, 2 sentence answers probably are not going to be sufficient. You're really going to need to dig deeper. Also, your second assignment this week is your second current event analysis. And I just wanted to remind you, I'll pull this up. Once again, here's where you're going to go forward. And remember what you're going to be doing. You're looking at 2 articles, not just one, but 2 articles focusing on a world current event. Not something that's happening in America, but a world current event. Follow these guidelines specifically as to what you are to do. I've given it to you verbatim. This is what I'm looking for, how to do it. So take time to read that and make sure that you're doing it as required. Welcome back once again, and I look forward to getting back into the habit of looking at world history as we march on to current day and start looking at some pretty interesting things. Have a great week. I'll talk to you soon. Go out and do something great for somebody.